It's day 61. We're going to deal with a Replit specific feature, which is amazing. It is Replit DB. Now, Replit DB allows you to do permanent data storage in the REPL with very, very little code. Now, you might be thinking, hold on a minute, haven't we just spent all this time saving to files, creating 2D lists, and all this other malarkey? Well, yes, you have, but that's because they are commonly used skills, and being able to save to a file is a really important thing. However, if you're on Replit, we might as well use the features built into it. And one of them is Replit DB, which is where we're easily able to store data permanently in a database with very little code. The first thing you need to do is bring up the database window by clicking on the icon on the left-hand side. This will give us the options and the commands for the database. Now, one of the nice things about this is that we have to remember very little code because we need to import it, but I don't need to remember what that is because I can just click insert and the code comes straight in, which is pretty cool. Now, remember that everything that we save in the database is permanently saved in this REPL. And I suppose at this point, it's worth saying that every user that uses your REPL gets a different and separate database. So this means that unless we're using a client server model where we're writing the website and other people are just logging into it, every user that uses this will get their own unique database. So it's good for independent data store, but not great for sharing information amongst multiple people unless you're building a server. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. First thing you'll want to do is to store things in a database. Now this works very, very similarly to the way that we used dictionaries before. If I put this bit of code in, set a key to a value, a key works just the same way that it does in a dictionary. So we give it a name, for instance, I'll call this one test, and we'll set it to a value. And I'm going to set it to the very helpful hello there. If I run this code, nothing's printed out, but what I've done behind the scenes in the database is I've saved hello there to the key test. We can check this by printing out all the keys, and I can just simply print the keys. And of course, if we click run, then we're going to see our test key is there. Of course, that's just printing out the key name, the value. We can use either the for loop that we used before, or we can actually access it in this way. So if we need to access a single key, we can get a key's value. Now we have to be reasonably sure that this key exists. If this key exists, then getting that and printing out the value should be quite easy, as you can see there. But if it doesn't exist, then we're going to get a crash. And that needs to be called to either try and accept construct, or we need to make sure that that key actually exists before we try to access it directly. Deleting a key is really easy. We just need to tell it what to delete. So if I delete my test key now, that's gone. And if we print out if we get all our keys again and print them out, we're going to get nothing. An empty set, meaning there's nothing in there. Now, one of the nice things we can do is we can actually access all keys that have a certain prefix. A prefix is some text appended to the beginning of the key. This means we can have a bunch of keys that look similar or start with similar text, but have different last numbers or different last values that could all be related to something consistent. Like this could be something like storing individual messages or individual pieces of data about a certain topic. So let's put a few things in. Let's set login 1. We'll set that to me. We'll copy and paste that a couple of times. We'll do login 2, login 3, and login 4. Put some different names there. And run that just to get that saved in the database. Now if we get all the keys again, so I'm going to find the code to list all the keys, and we print that out, you'll see that we've got a bunch of different keys in here now, all starting with login. So what I can actually do is if I use this, I can find all keys that start with login. I can just print those out. So I can add keys now that don't start with login, and this command won't find them. So there's a bunch of examples there about where that's going to go well. However, the most powerful thing about it is this, is that when I set a key's value, I can actually set that to anything I want, including lists and dictionaries. And this is where it becomes very, very powerful, because if I set this to say attached to my name, if I run this, that attaches a dictionary to that database entry. Now let's have a look at what that all looks like. So if I list all the keys again and print that out, you'll see that I've got a key called David. And if I access that key directly, then it'll print out the dictionary. And if I access the dictionary in the normal way, then I can access individual elements in that. And if you work through the 2D dictionaries video and were thinking, what's the point of this? Well, this is the point. Instead of using a 2D dictionary, using a persistent database that's always there and doesn't disappear when I turn the REPL off, means that I can store dictionary values in it. Now, the database has some limitations. I think one of them is that it can only store 5,000 different items. However, those can be 5,000 dictionaries. So we can make this pretty much as big as we want it to, as long as we think about how this is designed behind the scenes. So one of the things you might want to do is access all the keys and loop through the database. And that's quite easy as well. We bring in the keys and we just do for key in keys, and we can print stuff out. I'm going to use an F string here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in, actually I'm going to use an F string with using the 3 quotes trick to bring in the key, the colon, and I'm going to bring in then DB square brackets key, which will load the value each time. And that should allow me to see the entire list of things that I've got stored in my database. So I can use a loop in a very similar way. And of course I can use if that's in the loop and things like that to access the data if I need to. Common problems then. Well, by far the most common problem is trying to access a key that doesn't exist. We've sort of seen that before, so let's pull it back up and see what happens. Any key that doesn't exist is going to crash, so we could put that in a try except construct. We could use something like parse. Now, parse is not something we've talked about before, but parse is a line of code that just says, don't worry about it. Don't do anything. Python as a language can't have just a blank line. You can't have a construct with a colon and then nothing on the next line. It doesn't like that. So parse is a command that lets us deal with that without it being weird. So now it's running it, it can't get the database key and we're not seeing an error message. It's not the greatest way to deal with it though, because you would probably want to tell your user that there was an error before moving on, or at least do something with value, but that's a way around it. Another common error is this, trying to print out the value of all the keys and just getting the key name, which is a bit of a problem. The loop will bring in the key name, but what we can do to get around that is just change this print statement a little bit. If I use F strings to make it a little bit easier to manage, I can put the key, and then to pull out the key value, what I need to do is actually use get a key's value. Now a key's value is accessed by DB square brackets, and within the square brackets the name of the key. As this loop is pulling out the name of the key, I can use that variable to get that data going in. And then I can pull out as much as I need, which is really, really nice actually. Once again, I've broken some code, so go and fix that code for me, see if you can get it working. Okay, your challenge today. I'd like you to use Replit DB to build a one-person Twitter, because we all like the sound of our own voices. So let's make a one-person Twitter clone that does something similar. What you're going to build is a program that has a menu that asks you to add tweets or view tweets. If you add tweets, it's going to ask you to type in your tweet and it will save it in the database with the key value being the current timestamp. Now, getting the current timestamp is a couple of lines job with the datetime library, and I've popped that on the screen for you here. So use that to make sure you get the current timestamp. That's going to be the key of each tweet. You can store it as plain text, or you can store it as a dictionary if you want. It's entirely up to you. But the view tweet button is where the magic happens. If you select view tweet from the menu, I would like you to show the tweets in reverse chronological order, so the most recent tweets first. But I'd only like you to show 10 at a time. I'd like you to prompt the user to see if they want to see the next 10. If you say yes, it'll show them. If you say no, it'll break and go back to the main menu. When you're done, of course, share your code with us by publishing it to the community and tweet about us with the real Twitter using the hashtag Replit 100 Days of Code. So tomorrow is Time and Replit DB Project Day, and we're going to be building our own personal diary.